We had been playing about 3/4 of an hour when a gust of wind blew the door open, throwing the faint gleam of the candle out in front. I jumped to close the door, the light blowing out as I did so, and at the same instant I heard a report from the same direction as before. I closed the door, telling Bladel to light the candle. He fumbled for his matches and lit it, and we were both stricken dumb for the moment. Our chum was lying stone dead with a hole squarely in his forehead. The gentleman in the haystack was surely doing good work for his Kaiser. I am Sergeant Reginald Grant, and this is a real story written in my words over 100 years ago about my experience during the Great War. I arrived in France early in February 1915, and for 3 weeks we were put into the hands of an imperial battery, the Warwicks. They had taken part in the Battle of Mons, and the tales of the veterans of this world's memorable retreat, told in their own modest way, gave me my first clear impression as to what the boys of the Imperial Army really had endured for civilization in that campaign. At first, I thought they were trying to bluff us colonials, but the first night I was in the lines, I realized in the largest degree of human intensity the fearful truth of their experiences. The tuition given us by these warriors could not be excelled. They took us to Fleurbe, where their batteries were located on the outskirts of the town, in cellars in the back part of a building destroyed by German fire. There they had skillfully transformed the cellar into a gun pit, with a loophole 4 feet in diameter overlooking an orchard at the rear. Each time the gun spoke, it would first be shoved into the hole and the brush and sandbags removed, and as quickly as the message was sent, the camouflage was replaced. The color of the sandbags was a rusty gray, and this, in conjunction with the brushwood, prevented the spot taking on a dark appearance, which, next to white, is the most easily distinguishable to an airplane. The airbirds are always on the lookout for these dark spots, watching them intently to discover if any signs of activity are there, and immediately anything smacking of life appears. The exact location is wired to their trenches, and the place is whirlwinded with showers of death and destruction. When the Warwicks had completed our educational course, there was no detail of handling the guns with which we were not acquainted, and thoroughly so. I had the honor of being in charge of my gun due to the accuracy in my work. I think my chest expansion increased a trifle, but my cap did not get any smaller. At the end of 10 days, we left Medellin, arriving there February 28th. It was on the way from Medellin that I received my battle christening. The ceremony was performed by a bevy of 6 airplanes, 2 of them flying low and doing the sprinkling honors with a fusillade of bombs dropped on the road round about us. They left 20 or 25 of these calling cards, but 2 of the batteries of anti-aircraft guns handled by the Warwicks greeted them so warmly that they quickly decided they had overstayed their welcome and made a hurried departure. When the battery arrived at its designated point, we proceeded to camouflage the guns with the artistry we had derived from our instruction, covering them securely with grass and brushwood. It was at this time that I lost not only my increased chest expansion, but also a trifle more, because I was ordered to take my gun to a position known as the sacrifice gun position, 300 yards back of the front line trench. It derives its name, sacrifice gun, from the fact that rarely, if ever, in case of a heavy enemy raid, does the gun or any of its crew escape. This honor I was destined to receive many times throughout my career in the great adventure. I was in charge of the gun, and I installed it in a hedge. The only time we were to fire was when the enemy broke through and when our men in retreating were on a line even with us, and we could not fire until we got orders from the officer commanding or from headquarters. In daytime, the gun was covered with brush and other means of concealment to keep it from the ever-watchful eye of the Hun. At night, the crew consisted of 2 men, 1 on each side of the gun, and 3 more in a ruined building 100 yards in the rear of the gun. Our shifts were 2 hours on and 4 off. The purpose pursued by the sacrifice gun is to surprise the enemy when in full view and exposed, killing as many of them as possible, blasting gaps through their line and enabling our men to dig in the position to which they have retired. We knowing all the while that there is not one chance in 1,000 that the men connected with the sacrifice gun will escape either death or capture. Our orders were under no circumstances to leave the gun as long as a shell remained and a man lived. Deuced pleasant. The ground in front of us was well drilled with concealed holes all the way from 4 to 6 feet deep, in each of which strands of barbed wire had been placed, and the opening carefully concealed with clumps of grass, brush, and the like. Bladel and I volunteered to take first shift on the gun on the first night, about 10 o'clock. We had to take a narrow path on the way, with Fritz sniping us every step. He had registered the path, and it was a constant target for his machine guns and snipers. Our pet was well hidden in the hedge, with its nose poking through a hole in the leafage and so cunningly camouflaged that it was absolutely impossible to be noticed. While lying stretched on each side of the gun between the muzzle and wheel, any talking we did was to whisper cautiously to each other, as the very grass beneath our feet contained spies in those days. The countryside round about was as thickly infested with them as cells in a honeycomb, and thus we waited. Presently we heard the crackle of a piece of brushwood immediately out in our front. The intruder had gotten into our entanglement. "Halt! Who goes there?" No answer. I repeated the challenge. Still no answer. We made our way cautiously through the hedge, unclicked our safety catches, and were just about to fire in the direction of the sound when someone yelled.
"Where's the Durham Light Infantry lying?"
We ordered them to advance until within 10 feet. "Who are you?"
"Durham Light Infantry."
In the darkness, we could not tell who they were, but they spoke English like natives. "What are you doing out here wandering around in this fashion?"
"Well, we were taking a stroll and got lost, and we want to find our way back."
We directed them, and when they were lost sight of in the darkness, we resumed our places on each side of the gun and thought no more of the incident for the time. We again installed ourselves comfortably and were comparatively safe from the sniping in front, which was going on more or less all the time we were there, and about 30 minutes had elapsed when, in the silence of the night, I thought I again heard the crackling of a twig. Bladel heard it too.
"Did you hear that, Grant?"
"Yes," I whispered. We listened intently and heard it again, this time a little closer. We jumped up. "Halt! Who goes there?" No answer. Bang! Bladel fired, and these same fellows called,
"Don't shoot! We're looking for the Durhams."
We emerged through the hedge. "What in hell are you fellows doing around here again?"
"Well, we can't find the Durham Light Infantry."
"Well, you find some place away from here if you want to live to eat your breakfast. If I find you around here again, I'll shoot without warning." Again they asked us the way, and again we directed them, and saw them started on their way to the rear. Once more, we took our places on the gun between the wheels, and were hardly settled down when a sniper opened up on us from the rear, taking a chip out of the wheel to my right. Ping, 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 and the tree standing 10 feet in our rear was nipped. Ping, ping, and the shield of the gun got it this time. We were concealed behind the gun shield, which protected us pretty thoroughly from the front fire, and were congratulating ourselves on our haven of safety when, ping, ping, again from our rear came the messages from a sniper hidden there. In glancing back over my shoulder, I noticed in the pitchy blackness the flash of a rifle simultaneously with the report, and it seemed to come from a haystack about 200 yards to our right. "Blaze, look back for a minute and tell me what you see." Black darkness again for a few minutes, then another flare. We both watched intently.
"By God!"
exclaimed Blaisdell simultaneously with another report.
"Right out of the stack."
There was nothing for us to do but to lie there and watch, and we absolutely confirmed our convictions that we were being sniped at from this particular haystack. When our watch was up, I made my way to the ruin occupied by our relief, woke them and told them to keep their eyes open for the haystack and make themselves as small as midgets. Shortly after they started, Bladel came in. He told me that the relief party had been sniped at every step of the way to the gun. As Blaisdell entered, the open door threw out a fitful glare of light from our flickering candle, and a report from this particular haystack was followed by a bullet that knocked off a chip of brick just above the doorway. Our friend was certainly industrious, but I hoped to go him one better in the morning. I grabbed the phone and called up headquarters, informing them of what I had seen from the stock. The OC said the matter would be looked into immediately. There was no sleeping that night. We were too excited and chattered away like schoolgirls over our experiences, and to pass the time, the inevitable card game started. During the game, the sniping was active and continuous, the bullets chipping the building in all quarters. Our light was from a candle jammed into a jam tin and set between a couple of sandbags that we used for a table. Our mate, who had not yet taken his turn on the gun watch, was inclined to be rather skeptical about our story of the sniper, declaring it couldn't be possible that Fritzy could be carrying on such work in the very midst of our lines, and that our imaginations had been running riot with us. We had been playing about 3/4 of an hour when a gust of wind blew the door open, throwing the faint gleam of the candle out in front. I jumped to close the door, the light blowing out as I did so, and at the same instant I heard a report from the same direction as before. I closed the door, telling Bladel to light the candle. He fumbled for his matches and lit it, and we were both stricken dumb for the moment. Our chum was lying stone dead with a hole squarely in his forehead. The gentleman in the haystack was surely doing good work for his Kaiser. Just before daylight, we had a call from the OC accompanied by 3 or 4 men. He had phoned us he was coming. He wanted all particulars regarding my previous message. Under cover of the hedge, we got to within 50 yards of the stack, and everybody was convinced of the certainty of the information I had given, for, as we watched, 2 more flashes came from the stack. Not a particle of doubt was left, and the officer ordered a bomb thrown into the haystack. Inside of a minute, the red flames began shooting out from all sides. In another minute, it was ablaze, and in 5 minutes, we had the joy and satisfaction of hearing the muffled shriek of the soldier who had so well served his Kaiser. This ended for me a busy first night in the front line. When the ashes of the fire were searched, we found the charred body of a man, the remains of a rifle, and a complete set of telephone apparatus, which was traced to our trenches, and from there to the German lines. Wilhelm, for a certainty, lost an ace in the haystack. Besides our chum, and heavens knows what others, he had sniped the road along which relief parties were passing up and down. And that same night, one of the soldiers of an infantry battalion of the Warwicks, winding its way to the front trenches, got his death from a bullet squarely in the neck, and the Germans, having through him gotten an absolutely accurate range, our gun was wiped out by a single shell, together with 2 members of the crew. Next afternoon, while resting in billets to where I had been ordered, a shell struck the building, a splinter knocking out the eye of Ed Jackson, who was sitting beside me. He was not killed, but his wound was a blighty, taking him out of the game for good. The unwelcome visitors continuing to come, we were rushed to our battery of 3 guns in an orchard nearby. A curtain of sandbags was placed in front to prevent the flash being seen. As soon as we started firing, rifle shots from our left scattered the mud on all sides, coming at intervals of 5 or 10 minutes. Speculation was aroused, and we set a man to watch, and suspicion fastened on a farmer who was working his plow. Nothing was found on him. Next day, the same thing happened, and again the watch was set. This time our efforts were rewarded. The scout saw the farmer shoot and throw the rifle down. He reported to the officer, and we went over. The horny-handed son of toil was very busy at the plow as he saw us coming. He couldn't speak English. The officer sent to the nearest French battery, and presently a French soldier came who interpreted the officer's questions and the man's replies. He knew nothing, whatever he said, about the rifle shots coming from his direction. A search was then made for the rifle where the scout had seen him throw it, and not only one rifle but several, including English, French, and German makes, were found in various parts of the field, partly buried in the soil. When the guns were discovered, the farmer threw up his hands, wildly gesticulating and vehemently protesting that he knew nothing whatever as to how they came there. His was a short shrift. He was tried on the spot, tied to the pump of his own farm, and shot. I remained in this spot with the guns until March, when the costly victory of Neuve-Chapelle was fought. My battery was playing on their northern flank. The objective of the British Tommies was the city, which they took, but at a terrible toll. 6,000 Indian troops, mostly Gurkhas, were slain. The fearful mortality exacted from these troops was due to their impetuosity. They do not know fear. It was impossible to hold them. They rushed out before their time, and some of them suffered from the fire of our own guns. It was in this fight that our own famous and gallant regiment, the Princess Pat's, was decimated, sustaining a loss of over 700 men. This magnificent body of fellows went into the war 1,150 strong, and at the last roll call, but 22 of the original men answered. The price paid was too much for what was accomplished. We were then ordered to billets and stayed there until April 20th, when we were ordered to Ypres, arriving there April 21st. My battery was stationed at Saint-Julien, 1.5 miles northwest of the city. Here I was, detailed as observer, my duty being to get into the front-line trench and, from the most advantageous nook that I could find, try to discover whatever I could about the movement of the enemy, communicate my knowledge to the telephonist, who would in turn send it to headquarters. Late in the afternoon, I reported to the telephonist that a big fire was in progress somewhere on our left, as an immense smoke cloud was rising there and coming toward us. As shells had burst his wire, rendering it useless, he started out to deliver the message by word of mouth, running on top of the parapet as he started. That was the last I ever saw of him. He did not come back. Fritz was coming, and ahead of him rolled the sinister-looking cloud on our left. Then happened the strangest thing. The line trembled from one end to the other, as the Algerian troops immediately on our left jumped out of their trenches, falling as they ran. The whole thing seemed absolutely incomprehensible until I got a whiff of the gas. They ran like men possessed, gasping, choking, blinded and dropping with suffocation. They could hardly be blamed. It was a new device in warfare and thoroughly illustrative of the Prussian idea of playing the game. When the great yellow clouds came rolling toward us, orders were roared to wet our handkerchiefs and stuff them in our mouths, and half-choked and blinded we held for a day and a half. The buttons on our uniforms were tinged yellow and green from the gas, so virulent was the poison. Cooks and everybody else had been ordered into the line, as the giving way of the Algerians necessitated our lengthening out so as to take over their ground. Scotty of Mons fame was in the trench bay a few yards away from me, and when the cloud had passed by, I saw him rolling on the ground, apparently blinded, tears streaming from his eyes. I helped him to his feet, and when he got his voice back, his courage returned, and yelling,
"Let the barbarians come!"
he seized his rifle, rushed to the parapet, and fired point-blank every cartridge in his rifle in the direction of Fritz. At the end of the second day, another wave of hell's atmosphere came across, more deadly than any of the others, followed by a smothering fire from the German batteries, and the Germans broke in upon us on our right and left. Yard by yard we retreated, fighting as we went, and they occupied some of our front trenches for a time.
Subscribe for more real first-person historical stories, and leave a comment if you have any family memoirs you would like to share.